Hello, my name is Amy, and today I'm going to talk about the impact of COVID-19 crisis on low-income families in China. So the contents of my presentation will be first, essential question, impacts on local economy, impacts on low-income families, and finally, the measurements. As I go along this topic, I brought up one idea. So how does the COVID-19 crisis socially impact the low-income families in China, and what can be done to help? So first, to understand this topic, we need to first understand the impacts on local economy in China. So the primary industry fell by 3.2%, the second industry fell by 9.6% in China, and the third industry fell by 5.2%. And in 2020, the first season of China's GDP fell by 6.8%. And this is a graph that I made. You can see comparing with previous years, the 2020 has a significant drop, especially the second industry, it's a green part. But how are low-income workers impacted? To explore this idea, I separated into three different elements: tourism industry, service industry, and cell phone. And the cell phone is the farmers. To know how low-income workers are impacted, we need to understand the definition of low-income workers in China. So 5.51 million people live in poverty in rural areas in 2019 in China. The disposable income of rural residents was about $2,500, and the per capita disposable income was about $2,000 in China. Most of the low-income people receive limited education or none, and they're often migrant workers, but not always. And for example, low-income families who receive a minimum living guarantee from their governments are disabled people, left behind children's family, and more. Let's talk about the impact on the cell phone, which are the farmers. This industry is affected by different provinces' travel restriction and African swine fever in 2019, making it harder for the farmers and vendors to sell and circulate their products. Because animal husbandry held about 45% of the total industry, which create a huge loss to the total society in general. And we can see inside the 3.2% drop, the agriculture is still on most stable level and has a year-on-year growth of 3.5%. And the total value of the output of the animal husbandry fell by 10.6%. Let's take a closer look. So there are three main impact points: travel restriction, trade is suspended, and lastly, the spring planting is delayed. So firstly, the vegetable and crops cannot be stored for a long time in China and also in other countries too. So the serious overstocking and missing the best time to plant and to circulate the product increase the storage costs and reducing their product's freshness and value. Secondly, the travel restriction in different provinces made it harder for those farmers to sell and transport products smoothly, resulting some product need to be processed to the extreme, which has a huge loss on those farmers. And lastly, during 2020 March, this is an important time for the farmers to sow their products and also prepare for next year's supply. However, many families are unable to gather in a large number to sow their seeds, which create a huge loss. Secondly, let's look at the tourism industry. So due to the pandemic, a large number of travelers' orders have been canceled or refunded, with a cancellation rate about 80%. And in the first half of 2019, the China's rural tourism revenue about 860 billion RMB, with a total of 1.51 billion visits. However, the pandemic has caused economic losses of about 400 billion RMB for rural tourism, and especially the homestays are lost. And the outbreak of the pandemic will increase the cost of the tourism enterprise, and small and medium companies in tourism will face the difficulty of the capital shortage. Next, let's look at the service industry, which I call them as the migrant workers. Only 30% of China's small and medium companies have returned to the normal in 2020. And the labor force participation rate were about 59.2% and 56.5%. We can see from a survey, it's saying that 21.4% people saying they cannot go out due to the pandemic, and 66% of village has concern about going out to get COVID-19, even when the pandemic got eliminated. And this photo is actually from Meituan, and Meituan is one of the largest food delivery company in China, similar to Uber Eats. And according to a survey in March, it's saying most small and medium-sized companies, they cannot go back to work even in late March or even later till now. Let's take a closer look. So the per capita disposable income of the farmers in the fourth quarter of 2020 was about $520. There are four main impact points. First, the risk. Second, the resumption of worker is delayed. Third, public transportation. And last, the psychological panic. Due to the pandemic, most of the industry have been closed down, which has led to the inability of work and also return to their home even when the pandemic ended. So firstly, the urban control makes migrant workers face the risk of not being able to return to their home even when the pandemic ended. Secondly, the resumption of work is delayed, making it difficult for the migrant workers to determine the specific time or the best time to return to the city and go back to their work. And thirdly, the public transportation is restricted, making it difficult for migrant workers to return to the city itself. And lastly, we all know the pandemic has hit 35 large or medium-sized cities in China, which leading to a psychological panic among all the workers, even people themselves. What are the governmental measurements to help those low-income families? So helping those families, particularly the low-income families, most of the city announced the assurance of the consumption vouchers. And the vouchers are the type of transaction that has a specific monetary value and have a specific reason, such as daily consumption, food, and more. And we know more than 10 million offline business across the country have benefited from the vouchers, and more than 90% of which are medium, small, and micro business. These are the special programs that I really want to introduce. So 30 leading Chinese agriculture experts have teamed up with Alibaba to the Love to Help Farmers program to help farmers who are facing dilemma because of COVID-19. 10,000 farmers start to sell vegetables through live video in Taobao, and more than 300 anchors participated into this live to help those farmers. So these programs are aimed to help the low-income families and also the farmers to circulate and sell their unsellable products. These four signs are actually the leading companies in China who helped and participated into the special programs. And there are TikTok, Alibaba, Pinduoduo, and Jingdong. They're all similar to Amazon America. These are the example of the live video in different platforms. So we can see this actually from TikTok, and it's actually an anchor, and he's trying to connecting with a farmer in his farmland, and they're both like selling oranges. The anchor is the one who's helping the farmers to explain the product and also explaining more of the complicated problems, and people can commenting down below of their questions and what can be done. And then if we want to buy it, we can just click the site over here. Within a few seconds, people can just place their order, and it's pretty quick. And in the middle is actually another photo of showing the live video in Taobao and also TikTok. It's a governmental leader from Wuhan, and he's participated into this live video to sell and to target propaganda for its product in the city. So TikTok in China is more than just a music and entertainment platform. But during the pandemic until now, it has helped many low-income families with their livelihood and income issues. So quarantine and travel restriction definitely create huge economic losses in both the globe and also China. Most low-income families lack the social support, and they cannot get paid regularly because of COVID-19. However, the Chinese government has helped them through their daily life, such as give them the consumption vouchers and also the special programs that I just introduced about. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
All right, questions for Amy?
Benny?
Excuse me. Did you find any evidence from of how the Chinese government maybe helped people in high density areas compared to farmers? Because I think they'd have very different issues. They'd have a lot of the same issues, but also different issues. So did you find any evidence of how they may have changed how they would help them?
Yes, I did. So actually in my paper, I talk about how different regions in China that have been impacted because of COVID-19, and different regions, they all have like different impact point. For example, those low-income families, they all come from, most of them come from the western region of China. And for those regions, the government have some like specific programs to help them, except those like special programs that I just talked about. And for other regions, they maybe like connect with other cities, and they all have like different measurements and policies in regarding to the COVID-19 and also the income issues and everything. Yeah. Sarah?
Did you find anything in your research, or did you decide to compare any of this information about COVID relief in China to the U.S.'s COVID relief plan?
I wanted to, but I feel like if I include those topics in my paper, it will be too broad. But I really wanted to, and also I read research about the COVID-19 crisis on America too. And before I participated into like a video from the Harvard professor, he's doing like a research online, and also he has like a specific website talking about how the low-income families in America, comparing the black people family, and also the white people's family, and also all their income issues and education and health issues. Yes. Oh, Mr. Yatz?
Do you have a sense of trends looking forward based on this population and given vaccination and other kinds of trends?
Yes, I did. I think for the situation, it's all these provinces are getting better. However, the pandemic now has like a bit coming back to China now. And I guess for different regions, specifically because we only have one government, so it's like the government has to give different provinces or different local governments like orders and tell them what to do. So I think it's making them like a little bit difficult to actually to implement those policies. But in general, I think the situation is getting better. Yes. Mr. Polito?
I really liked all the statistics you had, all the concrete numbers and percentages. And I'm curious where those came from. And then as sort of a quick follow-up, I'm wondering how you looked out for potential bias in any of those statistics that came out.
Yeah, so the statistics I got those statistics from the like a government website in China. It's called the Bureau of Statistics. And I think they're unbiased because they're just purely statistic and numbers. But when I'm talking about the interview or like some specific writings about some people or some family, then I think I will mention about the bias in my paper. Yeah. Oh, this is the girl. Hi.
I'm curious whether you found any research about gender and whether it was in the rural areas or in the urban areas and the impact from the pandemic improving due to vaccinations and so forth. Because in the U.S. there are statistics about the labor force return favoring more men in the labor force returning to work than women. I'm just wondering what that's like in China.
Yeah, actually, the one picture that I just showed from Meituan, it actually has its own report about gender and also low-income families. I think similar with US, China also have a specific favor on men, especially the male low-income workers. And for example, those delivery people, and most of the delivery people, they are male in China. And because female first, they have different health issues, and also they just have different family issues, and also the societal expectation of women staying home, especially in the rural areas, making this very difficult. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.